My name is Ethel. I'm 73 years old. And I've learned that time has a silent way of revealing who's who. Has it ever crossed your mind that sometimes the one who seems to be the weakest in the room is precisely the one who holds everything upright? A lot of people look at me and see only one lady with wrinkles, slow steps, and tired hands. But no one imagines what these hands have already built, nor how much they have already been ignored. When my daughter-in-law looked at the receptionist and said, "Don't talk to the old lady. She is just the cleaning lady," unnerving, something inside me changed. And that's what I'm going to tell you about today. Maybe you came here because you were curious about this story, or because you have already felt in your skin what it is like to be diminished by someone in your own family. If that's your case, I understand you. I'm not here to scream my pain. I'm here to show you how silence also speaks, and sometimes it's what solves it. In this video, you will find out everything that happened on that trip, what silenced me, and then made me get up, because that phrase said out loud, it was the beginning of a turnaround that no one expected, and who laughed at me. He cried afterwards. But before we dive into the heart of this story, I need you to know something. What happened in the hotel lobby was not just a humiliation. It was a cut, an open wound in front of strangers, recorded by cell phones, echoed by laughter that I will never forget. My daughter-in-law pointed at me as if I were a forgotten object in the corner of the room and said, loud and clear, "Don't talk to the old lady. She's just the cleaning lady." And my son, my own son, lazy cow, laughed. But what they didn't know was that that hotel had my name on the papers. Every wall there was raised with the years I took from myself to give to them. What happened after that? I only say one thing. She did not imagine that by diminishing me in public, she was activating something that slept quietly inside me. Before continuing, can I ask you a favor? If this story has ever touched you, if you feel that in some way it is also yours, stay here with me. Leave your like, subscribe to the channel. Sometimes we just need to know that we are not alone, listening or telling, because there are stories that hurt more when they are stored too much. And today, I decided to open mine. When the van pulled out of the Miami airport, I had the window ajar, letting the warm wind hit my face. I saw the palm trees lining the avenues, the clear sky. The clear sky. That blue that only Florida has. Coral Gables has always had a different charm. And that hotel, the Coastal Pearl Resort, was the last one I bought before I retired. I gave my all to that project, and now they're sitting next to my bags, with Tiffany talking loudly in the front seat and Brandon distracted on his phone. I wondered if anyone there still remembered who I was. Ethel, hold these backpacks here, and watch out for Deshawn's. There's the tablet inside. He didn't even look me in the eye when he asked, He just passed things to my lap and continued talking to Brandon about Sunday brunch. I held on. I held the backpacks. I held the hurt on. I held the silence. Because, for a second, I thought maybe it was just fatigue from the trip. But what came next, proved to me that it was not that. We arrived at the resort around 3 in the afternoon. The facade was exactly as I remembered it. White marble, white marble, mirrored glass, soft, inconspicuous fountains touching the entrance with that sound of clean water. A valet came to open the van door with a wide smile. I recognized the uniform. I was the one who designed the model. My nightmare catched it so called. Brandon got out first, gave the car keys to the boy, as if he were a king handing over his carriage. Tiffany adjusted her sunglasses and went out giving orders. Pick up the children's bags first, and please, don't drag them on the ground. They from Samsonite. I went down last. Alone. Unknown. With my shabby leather bag. The one I bought in 1989 at an outlet in Boca Raton. It was the only item of mine in the middle of so many designer bags. When I stepped on the floor of the lobby, I felt a tightness in my chest. It wasn't pain. It was memory. Neoras town. Every corner of that place brought a piece of me. The main chandelier, hanging right in the center of the lobby, came from Italy. The paintings were chosen by me in a small gallery in Santa Fe. The soft aroma in the air, a unique blend of lavender and lemon that I created with a Chicago perfumer. And there I was, invisible in the midst of my own creation. When I tried to approach the grandchildren, Tiffany clicked her tongue. Impatient. Zuri, stay close to me. Deshawn, no. Hold here. Almost said that. As if my touch could stain. My grandson didn't even look at me. And Brandon, he pretended not to notice, as if it were all normal. No, as if his mother was born to be in the background of the photo. Lured, carrying the bags. The receptionist, Yasmin, saw me and widened her eyes, but I made a subtle gesture with my hand. It was not time yet. She understood. Namtiong. He pretended not to know me. He maintained his impeccable posture. I respected that. I always taught my team to be professional above all else. As she checked in, Tiffany already began to get angry. I hope the presidential suite is ready. I don't want any excuses. Brandon laughed. Calm down. Lilo. Love. When I stand, what do I? See. Everything will be fine. But it didn't work. At the first setback, a matter of exchanged reservation, Tiffany raised her voice. And there, Lockhound, in front of other guests, she did what I never imagined I would hear. But this, I'll tell you about that later. At that moment, while they were arguing about sweet size, I looked around. A couple was taking pictures near the sculpture in the hall. A lady praised the flowers at the reception. A boy ran past, happy. No one there knew that this old woman with a brown bag had paid for every inch of that floor. It's strange how, sometimes, we can own everything, and yet feel like you have no place at all. And do you know what hurt the most? It was realizing that my son thought this was normal. He didn't say anything. He didn't defend myself. How? He didn't look at me. It was as if I had ceased to exist there, between the entrance and the counter. I ask you something. Have you ever felt like a stranger within your own family? Have you ever tried to participate in a conversation and been ignored as if you were not in the room? You've done everything for someone, and that someone just acted like you were a shadow. If you've ever felt that, he comments below, Vincero. I've lived that, or it touched me, because sometimes we just need to know that we are not alone in this pain. And in that lobby, with my soul gathered inside me, I understood one thing. This was not a misunderstanding. That was a portrait of what they really thought of me. I was too good. And because of that, Leon, they got used to treating me as if I were part of the furniture. Always there, always available, always silent. But I was no longer the woman I was 20 years ago. And as much as my hands trembled inside, my heart was beginning to take hold. Something inside me was changing. And you know what's worse? They thought I didn't see it, that I didn't feel. They did not imagine that silence also listens. And that, one day, I'm only stood down. One day, cocked so show. He answers, not tired. But what Tiffany did next, right there at the front desk, showed me that rock bottom can have a basement, because it wasn't enough to ignore me. She needed to diminish me, out loud, nay, and witnesses. Want to know what she said? And what did I do right after? So don't get out of there, Ma, because it was there that everything began to turn. Yasmin explained with the patience I taught herself. The presidential suite was occupied by a returning guest, and Tiffany had been relocated to the Coastal Deluxe, an equally luxurious accommodation overlooking the bay. But Tiffany would not listen. No? How? No. Now. No. Then done. I asked for the presidential one in advance. I don't accept anything else. Call the manager now. Brandon, with his arms crossed, only muttered, "Am disobaktoblad, nanan. Love. Calm down. No? In. Kantai. Tersegan child." But without conviction, I took a deep breath, stepped forward, and said, "Wow, Tiffany, honey, well, maybe we can sort this out calmly. If you want, I can." It was there. It was exactly there. She spun on top of her heel like a bad soap opera actress and gave me a sharp stare, as if I were a stain on the carpet. "Don't talk to this old woman. She's just the help." The entire lobby froze. I felt it. The air became dense. A couple waiting for check-in looked away. A little boy pulled his mother's arm. Not Shagname. And, pointing, "Ow." I felt the heat rise up my cheeks, not from shame, but of disappointment. I saw Jasmine freeze. His fingers stopped on the keyboard. Her gaze met mine, and in her eyes there was panic. She knew who I was. She knew what this woman had just done. And in that second, near calm, I knew I could end it all with a single sentence. I could turn to Tiffany and say, "Do you know who you're talking to?" But I didn't. No. I just gave a slight nod. Nod. Discreet and firm. Now. Held. Almost imperceptible. As if to say, "Not yet." Tiffany continued, "Yasmin Moswa, or whatever your name is. Don't waste time listening to this lady. Wow. She came with us to help with the children. I toast her, and the ace tongue. She knows nothing about reservations. And then, what really tore me apart, Brandon laughed. Laughed. Like someone who sees a comic scene. Like someone who watches a bad joke and finds it funny anyway. My God. Tiffany. My did I'm not so bad too, he said, laughing and holding his own chin. You're terrible. Terrible. But she was not wrong. Caroline, he said, with all the letters. Mom, go sit there for a while. We solve it. No. She called me Mom, like someone who calls an old dog that disturbs the room. My heart didn't break at that moment. It shattered in silence, like porcelain thrown on the floor at dawn. I looked at him and wondered, one, where was the boy who slept clinging to my neck on thunderous nights? Where did the son who said I was his world go? The Brandon who was there was another. He was a man who was amused by his own mother's humiliation in public. Tiffany turned to the reception again. Are we going to solve this? I don't want to listen to this old woman inventing solutions. It has no importance here. It's just the cleaning lady. The cleaning lady. That's what she said. And the scariest thing, that was the way she said it. As if it were a universal truth. As if there was nothing there that I could contest. I took a deep breath, looked at the marble floor that I had imported from Verona, and thought, "Whoa, fair, isn't shall, hurry. This is what they think I am." I stood up, the spine straight, the hands steady. Yasmin whispered, "Mrs. Carter, may," and I just shook my head. Not yet. I could have ended it right there. He could have thrown them out, undone the reservation, summoned security. How? But no. Silence, at that moment, was more powerful. I took my bag, looked at the two of them, and just said, "I'm going upstairs." And I walked slowly towards the elevator. As the doors closed behind me, I heard Tiffany say something more nonsense about the kind of view she wanted. But nothing else affected me. The pain I needed to feel was already felt. Inside the elevator, my reflection stared at me. A 73-year-old woman, whole-souled, and heartbroken into many small pieces, but still standing, still lucid, still strong. And it was there, alone in that mirrored elevator, that I decided I decided that this humiliation would have a response. Not with shouting, not with vengeance, but with dignity and with truth. Because what Tiffany did there, it would not be without consequence. And what Brandon allowed, Niship, it was what taught me the most. But you know what shocked me the most that night? That's not what they said. That's what I found out later. What they were saying behind my back. You know what? So, listen to me in the next part. Because what I heard, it was worse than any words spoken in front of me. That night, lying in a small, stuffy room overlooking an empty parking lot, I felt the kind of silence that screams. It was the opposite of everything I had dreamed of. Brandon had said he wanted to take me along to spend time as a family. But they put me in a standard guest room with 2 single beds. Noisy air conditioning? No. And no sign of affection. Not even a flower. A note? Ah, a gesture. I looked at the open suitcase in the corner of the room, folded by me, carried by me, and oh, how can tell, forgotten by everyone. Not at all. I tried to close my eyes, but I couldn't. Why? Near so could he have talking. The pillow, and on sea, as soft as it was, seemed full of invisible nails. Each time I turned on my side. Wow, oi, the phrase echoed again in my head. She's just the cleaning lady. Tiffany said it out loud. Wow, as if pushing someone down the stairs. And Brandon, my boy, Dion, I'd sent you to tell. I would time to about him. He found it funny. Well, Callum, sit out. I remembered when he was little, and I cleaned rooms in Orlando, in a roadside motel. Sometimes he would come with me, sit in a corner of the reception with a coloring book, while I scrubbed the floor with bleach in my hands. I remembered when I sold my engagement ring to pay for his last semester of college. From when I went to the hospital alone, after a fall on the stairs, and I didn't call him so as not to bother. Wow. I have always kept silent. Always. But that night, no. Under that cold roof, I wondered for the first time if it was all worth it. What was the point of giving everything, if now I was treated as a nuisance? I, who raised every pillar in that hotel, who drew the plan by hand, who spent years choosing the color of each wall, the fabric of each curtain. Now it was being called the help, and the worst. No one there denied it. No one said it wasn't true, because deep down, that's how they saw me. An old woman. Useful for carrying a suitcase, taking care of her grandson, and shutting up. The luxury of that resort, which was once a symbol of my effort, was now a prison with an Egyptian cotton sheet. I got up from the bed and went to the window. The dimly lit parking lot reflected the loneliness I felt inside. I saw a man lighting a cigarette near the dumpster. Wow. An employee? Probably. And I found myself thinking, how many nights does he spend there? Alone? Blacked out? How many women like me there are around the world who have given everything, and in the end they became just a forgotten name in a family diary. There, standing in that window, Well, I understood what it was to be invisible, and perhaps the cruelest thing was not even the contempt. It was the naturalness with which he came, as if it had always been like this, as if I should accept it, smile, and tripod by you, and be grateful for the chance to be treated like nothing. But it wasn't anger I felt. It was tiredness, a tiredness that came from inside the bones, the kind of tiredness that only those who have held the world on their backs know. I closed the curtains, sat on the edge of the bed, and stayed there, without crying, not to mention, just breathing slowly, trying not to lose myself. I knew that, from then on, nothing would be the same. Something in me was changing. A thread of strength began to be sewn in the middle of the pain, because I had already been beaten up too much of life not to recognize when the limit breaks. And that night, it broke. I just didn't know yet that the worst was yet to come, because the next day I would hear something that no mother should hear, something that, to this day, pains me to remember, and you will understand why. Wait for me in the next part, because there are things that not even time can erase. The next morning, I got up before everyone else, as I have always done all my life. I don't know how to sleep late. My body is already used to the silence of 5 in the morning, the smell of fresh coffee, and the noise of the world waking up slowly. I took a shower and dressed calmly. Elna did what Tom. Put on a simple necklace I bought years ago in New Orleans and went down to the restaurant. The sun was already illuminating the gardens with that warm light at the beginning of the day, and the breakfast room had few guests yet. I sat in a corner, waited. When Tiffany and Brandon arrived, they looked like they had come straight out of a travel catalog. Tiffany, made up as if she were going to a rehearsal, in a white dress and thin heels. Brandon, dress shirt open at the collar, face of someone who slept without any weight. The children came close behind, their eyes glued to the tablets. Tiffany soon took over the table with the tone of someone who thinks the world is there to serve her. I want eggs Benedict, but not just any one. I want it like I ate it in Manhattan. Soft yolk, light sauce, crusty bread, leon, no pasty stuff. And freshly squeezed orange juice. If it's a box, you can forget it. The waiter, poor thing, just took notes. Brandon was more concerned with looking at the notifications on his phone than anything else. I remained seated on the opposite side of the view, with the teacup in my hand. My grandchildren barely noticed me. Say good morning to Grandma. You were saying? Brandon said, without looking up. I am Lithoro. Good morning, the two murmured. I'd said cut, not looking away from the screens. I got a little closer to Zuri and tried to lightly touch a strand of her hair, just to straighten it, a gesture that every grandmother makes without even thinking. But before my fingers touched, Tiffany let out a snap with her tongue and a sharp look. Don't mess with it. It was done yesterday. It's paid. It was like a slap, but in the form of a sentence. And there, a huss, at that beautiful table, surrounded by expensive plates and crystal glasses, I was reduced again. The woman who created that hotel, who architected every corner of it, was being treated like someone who could mess up the hairstyle of a rich child. And Brandon? He didn't even move. He didn't even look up. He was still there, Neon, impassive. Oh, as if I deserved it. As if that were natural. As if I were part of the hotel service. But what hurt the most was when Tiffany, out of nowhere, commented out loud, in that sweet voice she uses when she wants to be poisonous. These kids are so polite, even though they were raised with such a limited helper around. And then she turned to her children and said, "Say thank you to Grandma, the cleaner." I swear, inside, something crackled. Oh, and it wasn't sadness. It was a rupture of clarity. At that moment, everything became very clear to me. They weren't just being rude. They were rewriting who I was, and doing it in front of my grandchildren. Oh, hi. They were shaping my image as if I were just a fragile, unimportant lady, a disposable figure who was just there to obey. If you're listening to me now, really listen to me. I'm here, opening my heart, telling my story, and only God knows how it hurts to relive it. If you're listening, now, dear ones, leave a like on this video and subscribe to the channel because I still have a lot saved to tell you. Sometimes we just want to feel that there is someone on the other side really listening, feeling together. Why? I stayed there, silent, kneel. But inside, I started to stop waiting, stop wishing for a hug, an acknowledgement. While say when a child, un deal call, a sweet word. From that morning on, was did I shout? Then I found them. I stopped trying to belong, and I began to observe, because silence, when it is filled with lucidity, begins to register everything. And I saw it now. I saw the impatient looks, the cold commands, the contempt masked as formality. They wanted me there only as long as I was useful and silent, but what they didn't know, is that silence also thinks. Silence listens, and silence sometimes prepares, because that very morning, without them noticing, hell, I realized that the story they were trying to tell about me, it was going to have a different end. And it was in this atmosphere, with my stomach tight and my heart in pieces, that fate led me to listen to a conversation that was not for me. A conversation that would change everything. Do you want to know what my own son said about me when he thought I wasn't listening? So, wait, because what I heard behind that cabin was the worst kind of betrayal, the one that comes disguised as contempt, and of plan. Sometimes the present hurts so much that the only way out is to hide in the past, even if it hurts too. After that breakfast, I returned to the room with a light body, but a crushed soul. I sat on the edge of the bed and stayed there, quiet, looking at nothing, and without even realizing it, My head started to come back. Go back to when it all started. I found myself again in my early 20s, newly married to Henry. Almore. And cow. He was my ground. A good, how, fair, hard-working man. We didn't have much, but we had everything that mattered. When Brandon was born, Henry cried so hard he could barely hold him. It was the son he had dreamed of since he was a boy. But the dream did not last. 3 years later, wow, he had an accident on a construction site and did not return home. I remember the call from the police of the burial, the smell of his clothes that I hid in a box and never had the courage to wash. I was left alone with a small child. No life insurance, no money saved, nothing. Just the desire not to let that boy miss anything. I started working as a maid at a roadside hotel in Orlando. I was given a rollaway bed and permission to take Brandon with me, as long as he didn't get in the way. And he didn't get in the way. It never got in the way. I would lie there in a corner of the reception, drawing, reading, home, waiting. Sometimes he slept cuddling with me on a thin mattress inside the sheet deposit. I worked double shifts. Then I stayed up all night washing uniforms, ironing clothes, counting coins to buy milk. But he didn't see it. I hid it. She hid the bills, hid her tears, hid her tiredness. When he turned 10, he asked me for a bicycle. I sold my only pair of gold earrings. When he entered college, the bills arrived in his name. But I was the one who paid in secret. Every penny. I even had to sell the only car Henry left me, an old Dodge, but full of history. I smiled when he said, my college is cheap. Mom, I take a bag. He didn't know that the bag covered only half. I did extra cleaning, cooked lunch for others, invented courses in floral arrangements that never existed, just to justify the money that came in. He graduated in administration. I remember it as if it were today. Rented suit, now, wide smile, diploma in hand. I stood in the back of the audience with a borrowed dress, my heart bursting with pride. And him? He didn't even introduce me to anyone. He was too busy with friends, with plans, with his new life. And I stayed there, invisible, as always. Then came his first job, his first car, and his first apartment, and Tiffany. Tiffany, noun, one day so struck home, with the cocked nose and accent of someone who studied abroad, even though he had never swept the floor of a bathroom. The first time I met her, she called me Brandon's mom, in that slurred, dry voice. He never looked me in the eye. He never called me by name. It was as if I were an old piece of family furniture, which no one throws away out of pity. And now, after everything I've lived, after everything I've done, one sober in the cleaning, Grandma, in that woman's mouth, they don't know. Neither of them knows. that the money for his first car came from my second hotel, that the down payment on the apartment was paid with the sale of my childhood home, that the hotel where they were staying, all that luxury, had been my most ambitious project, built after 5 banks denied my loan request. I went after the 6th, alone, with sweaty clothes and sunburned faces. I did all that, and now, wow, am nothing more than a forgotten old woman in the corner of the table. What destroys me the most is not contempt. It is injustice, the injustice of those who do not know the story behind the tired face, of those who do not understand the value of each wrinkle. But you know what? When we relive all this, it's not just to regret it, it's to remember who we are. I may be called the help, but inside me there is a woman who has not missed anything. And if they think I'm going to keep my head down, they are wrong. Because that same afternoon, I heard something behind the pool hut, something that made me understand that it wasn't just contempt. It was interest. It was flat. And when you find out what they were saying, you will understand why I decided to react. It was the afternoon of the 3rd day, and the sun was too strong, even for me, who always liked heat. I walked slowly through the pool area, as if looking for shade, but I really just wanted a little quiet, a little air. What is Sybil Caprio? My heart was still heavy with everything that had been happening, every gesture, every sentence crossed, every silence from Brandon. What in Charterfarm? I sat on a wooden bench near the private cabins on the side of the resort. The thin curtains swayed in the wind, and that's when I heard it. Inadvertently. Without searching, I just heard, "She's going to die soon. We're just waiting." Tiffany's voice came dry, natural. "I'll decide antes, lost at you," as if commenting on the weather. More down. I don't even know why she came. She doesn't even have money to take care of herself. And then, Brandon, my son, with that lazy voice he uses when he wants to look cool. Tiffany laughed, muffled, and added, "We did you the favor of bringing her. Deep down, she is just a luxury maid." My feet froze. The whole body froze. I couldn't breathe for a few seconds. I stood there, hidden between the wall and an ornamental plant, listening to my daughter-in-law and son laugh at me, as if I were a nuisance, a weight, a bad joke that insists on living. They didn't know I was there. Little did they imagine that the luxury maid heard them, with each word entering like a needle in her chest. And, incredible as it may seem, I didn't cry. Not even there. Not even after. Because at that moment, I stopped suffering. It was as if a curtain opened inside me. The love I felt for them, that love that always blinded me, silenced me, made me swallow outrage, dissolved, and in its place there was only a kind of certainty, that gave me strength. If one day you have already discovered that someone is only waiting for your absence to feel free, then you will understand what I felt. It wasn't just contempt. It was flat. They were waiting for me to die, as if I were an obstacle in their way, as if my life was there just getting in the way of their comfort. And no, that lit up a part of me that had been dormant for a long time. Because, honey, oh, when we find out what people say about us when they think we're not listening, that's when the truth really reveals itself. And you know what? I kept listening. No. Tiffany said that Brandon was already checking with a lawyer if there was something in my name, that they were hoping for me to disappear soon so they could take care of the rest. And Brandon, the boy I raised with my hands injured from scrubbing floors so much. She said that no one will miss her. Well, she doesn't even have friends. Ah, Tiffany added, no, could just stop that all. Even she doesn't know how much time she has left. It looks like a ghost walking around. Ghost. Ah, that's how they saw me. Well, I closed my eyes, took a deep breath, and backed away slowly, making no sound. Not a costed. Each step was a brick that I knocked down from the illusion that I had spent a lifetime building. And yet, there was a calm inside me, aloud, barely aloud, lucid, once, serene calm. Nay, I sterne quirab astiu I. For the first time, my heart did not ask for justice. He asked for silence, because silence is the last response of the strong. And if you've come this far with me, I'm how listening to this story long is because the most memorable moment is yet to come. What I did after that, no one in my family ever imagined. Not even I knew I would be able to. But first, I had to take a step, only one, on a sound, a step that would change everything, opening the vault of the past. Do you want to know what was stored inside? So listen to what's next, because the key was already in my bag, and their world was about to turn around. Stacy, I returned to the room slowly, as if carrying an invisible weight on my back. But it wasn't sadness that hurt me the most. It was understanding. The naked acceptance that my son and that woman never saw me as I am, just as a useful name on the expense sheet. A convenient lady who shows up at Christmas and disappears in January. I sat in the chair by the window and stood there for a while, listening to the air conditioner creaking. Then I opened my bag, searched the bottom. No, not top wire. We you stopped in and come to, and found the card that I had kept for more than 10 years. It was Jasmine's. I had been a reception intern when I hired her. Back then, I saw a light in her. I invested in her training, paid for courses, and followed her from afar, always in silence. When I retired, I made sure to appoint her as the resort's general manager. She didn't even know it, but she was still one of the few people I still trusted. With my eyes closed, I dialed the direct number of the board. She answered the second ring. Coastal Pearl. Nod. Yasmin. Talking. My dear, I said in a firm but calm voice. It's me. She choked on the other side. Mrs. Ethel? No, be away. You. Are you here? I am. Since Sunday. What? Now Taishtergen. Invisible. Lasterna Tashakotard. Divisible Jokri. As you can imagine, she was silent for a moment, and then, now, with her voice filled with emotion, said, "Now, we are ready. You just have to say it." He smiled for the first time in days. "Prepare the presidential suite and call the financier." "Yes, no, ma'am." Turned off. I am Lord Batan. I took a deep breath. No. And I went to my suitcase. At the bottom of it, inside a black zippered folder, why, dear, were the documents, old receipts, invoices, transfers, Brandon's subscriptions, copies of grandchildren's school fees that I paid for years without ever being recognized, proof of the deposits I made to help with the mortgage on their house, to save Brandon's car from being impounded, to cover Tiffany's card when she forgot to pay. Everything recorded. Now, everything organized. I was never one to scream. I always preferred to write, register, to let life tell for me what my mouth would never say. While arranging the papers on the bed, so I ran my fingers over some dates. I remembered the nights when I did double cleaning just to get those values. Of the times I took out of my retirement what they asked for, just this once. Mom, and I did. It always did, because I thought that love was this, giving without expecting a return. But at that time, no. I understood. When time, love is also a limit. Love is also saying enough. Allow me to pause here. You know, Arnie, there are moments in life when we need to stop and face what has happened. And it hurts. It hurts to see how much we annulled each other, how much was given to those who never valued it. But it is also at that moment that a different force is born, a kind of dignity that doesn't scream, doesn't take revenge. It is only imposed with silence and truth. If you've ever felt that mixture of sadness with courage, disappointment with clarity, comment below. I understand you, or I know how it is. Because sometimes we just need someone who recognizes our pain. I organized each document as if putting together a puzzle. It was my paper legacy, the story they pretended not to see. Now it had a date, value, signature. All I looked at myself in the mirror and adjusted the necklace around my neck. The same necklace I bought at the beginning of my freedom. It was time to show who I was. But not with scandal, with presence, with serenity. Whoa, how? Yasmin called me back. The suite is ready, Mrs. Ethel, and the financial is gathered. Perfect, I replied. And okay. Soon, I will have visitors. She didn't ask anything else. He didn't need to. The tables were starting to turn, but there was still one last piece that I needed to put in place, a piece that no one there knew existed. And when it was revealed, man nearly scored him out. Oh my, everything would change for good. Want to know what it was? So stay here, because the next step has been taken before everyone. But only I knew the ending. I woke up before the sun rose. There was still a remnant of the moon hanging in the sky, as if time did not want to follow. But I knew that morning would not be like the others. I put on my light blue ensemble, the same one I wore at the opening of the Coastal Pearl. It had straight stitching, tight fabric, and reminded me of who I was, even though they had tried to erase me. I tied my hair carefully. I took my bag, the documents, and I waited. It didn't take long for the bedroom door to slam with that impatient rhythm. It was Tiffany. Not good morning. Not even look. Ethel, take the kids to the pool. Please, I want you to stay out of the sun between 11 and 3. Apply protector every hour. My. And you and so wait ha. Oh, the bathing suits are in the blue bag. Wash it later. Mondao. Let it dry in the bathroom. And don't forget, Zane only eats sliced strawberries. And Zuri Serokasa only cut grapes. Do you understand? She spoke as if dictating rules to any employee. Without even looking at my face, Brandon followed close behind, with his cell phone in his hand and boredom on his face. He held out a white card, one of those emergency cards from the hotel. Here, if there is a problem, call this number. But try not to bother. Okay? Of course. I said, Man, I tempted his. I picked up the card with steady hands. I looked at them, not as a wounded mother, not as a humiliated woman. I looked at them as if I already knew the end of the story. And he smiles. A small, and rising up and out, waist, silent smile. Oh, and then, I turned my back. But I didn't go to the pool. I went down the service elevator. Wow, as I had done so many times in the past. I walked through the internal corridors, which only the employees know. I smelled the kitchens. I heard the muffled sounds of the machines. Each step was a reunion with the woman I was, the one that started there, and that, on that day, it was going to end a cycle. At the administrative reception, Yasmin was waiting for me. His eyes were moist and his body tense. Everything is ready. Mrs. Ethel, Leo descend. I'm calm. Finance is in room 5, and the board team has been notified. I nodded. City Jasmine Chong. Let's take it easy. Jasmine. Each thing in its own time. And you. Do you want me to prepare the press? The communications team? I smiled slightly. Not yet. First, let's give the message to those who need to listen with their hearts. She understood. No. He took me to the presidential suite, the real one. The one Tiffany wanted so much. The door opened. And there it was, bright, with a full view of Biscayne Bay. Fresh flowers on the table. No considered house, immaculate sheets, and in the center of the bed, an envelope with my handwritten name. It was my own message. And that morning, it would all start there. But while I was preparing, Tiffany and Brandon still believed I was poolside, putting on sunscreen, cutting strawberries, folding laundry. They still felt that the old helper was obeying. Little did they know that every second that passed brought them closer to the biggest surprise of their lives. Have you ever felt this turn from within? That feeling that the time has come to stop begging for love and start showing value? It's like waking up from a long dream, only instead of relief, there's strength, mild, lucidity comes, come power. And if you think the worst is over, wait, because the biggest lesson they would learn, was yet to come, Michelle. And it would not be with shouting, nor with scandal. It would be with a gesture, a single silent gesture that, when made, there would be no turning back. Do you know what it was? Meet me in the next part, and you will see what happens when the cleaning lady decides to show who is boss. I crossed the internal corridors of the hotel as someone who knows every trace on the floor, every breath on the walls. They were passages hidden from the eyes of the guests, but they knew my steps well. No. Among the backstage of the elegant routine that I myself helped to build, time seemed to respect those who built everything in silence. When I arrived at the main office, Jasmine was waiting for me. With a long desk, stacked folders, and a gaze that mixed reverence and readiness. I sat down unhurriedly. I put the bag next to it and took a deep breath. It was like coming home, not the house of walls and furniture, but the house of my dignity, where I feel going to come. Have we started? She asked, almost whispering. We have begun. I replied. She opened the first portfolio. Contracts? We reviewed every clause that gave me quiet control. Even after my retirement, I never wanted to interfere, but I was never naive either. Then came the consumption reports of the last few days. All Tiffany meals charged in the room. The extra services requested as if they were customary. Massages, champagnes, private transportation. All with her signature or Brandon's. And then came the most delicate part, the transfer of travel expenses. You can transfer everything to Brandon's personal card. Please include the formal notice with my signature. If there is a refusal, send it to the legal department with the proof of the transfers I made in the last 5 years. They're all here. Yasmin nodded. No, already printing the documents. And the memo? Signed. No. He said, well, my sir. And from now on, it comes into force. At the top of the paper, it read, New VIP Guest Relationship Policy, Temporary Internal Guideline. From today on, all services must be made based on the hierarchy of ownership and not on social assumptions. In other words, no one would treat Brandon and Tiffany as owners of the piece anymore, because they weren't, and they never were. I reviewed every line. My hands didn't tremble. For the first time in many years, everything seemed sure, aligned. As if every pain I had swallowed now had an exact place to rest. And it wasn't a place of revenge. It was a place of truth. If this piece of my life can become a mirror or a hug for someone, will it help me to carry it forward? Like and subscribe here to the channel. It makes more difference than you think. There are stories that need to be told, not to hurt, but to heal. And perhaps his story also deserves to be heard. Yasmin poured me some tea. Chamomile tea with honey, the same one she served me when I was an intern, and I stayed up late reviewing the weekly reports. Do you want me to prepare the main hall? She asked. Not yet, I replied. None. First, I need to take a walk with my eyes open. She understood. I needed to see clearly who they were outside of my shadow. He needed to observe them without the pain of his mother, but with the firmness of the woman who survived everything. The sun outside was beginning to rise, and they still thought I was by the pool, opening jars of grapes and applying sunscreen every hour. Tiffany was probably taking selfies by the sea. Brandon, showing off in the stories. Meanwhile, I signed the line that separated what was love of what became abuse. On the way out of the office, I met one of the hotel's oldest employees, Robert. Hi, Mrs. Oh, Ethel, he said, surprised. Smile in flesh, bone, and soul. He opened his arms and hugged me. I missed you. How? Me too. But now, they always saw. Oh, I went back for a while. Back, but not to explain it to me. No. I came back to put everything in its place. And there was a place, only one, where everything would start to change. A place where Tiffany never imagined she would see me enter. Do you know what it was? Just wait and see. Because the stage was ready. Wow. It's the first act of truth was about to begin. They came back from the tour with that air of superiority that only those who have never carried weight in life have. Tiffany came with her sunglasses on the tip of her nose and a designer bag dangling on her arm, as if she were parading down Fifth Avenue. Brandon behind, distracted on his cell phone, laughing at something futile. As always, the children were now distracted. Of course, me played in cars that didn't even match the heat. I watched from afar, from the balcony of my new suite. How, as they entered the old room expecting to find me there, folded in silence, ready to serve them. But what they found was emptiness. The children's bathing suits were washed, dried and folded on the bed, the toys arranged in a striped bag, everything impeccable. Only I was missing, and it was no longer there. It took little time for the discomfort to turn into frustration. First, the quick search, then, the tone of his voice rising, and then the inevitable, the trip to the reception. Tiffany, 9-1, with the upright posture of someone who thinks the world owes her favors, hit the countertop with her nails done. My mother-in-law is gone. Where is she staying now? Yasmin, with a trained smile, replied gently, No, how? Mrs. Carter is in another wing, reserved for council members. And what's the room number? For administrative reasons. This information is confidential. Confidential? In family. Child. I see. Oh, ma'am. But still, no. We have policies to follow. Tiffany's expression changed. Yes. Arrogance gave way to confusion. She wasn't used to hearing no, and even less to be ignored. Brandon tried to intervene, half not knowing what to say. Yasmin, it's my mother. We just want to know if she's okay. She's fine. Mr. How? Carter. Nay, Howard How. We appreciate your concern. The silence that came afterwards was almost embarrassing. Tiffany recoiled, but her eyes were shooting. For the first time, she wasn't in control, and the world around her. He did not give in. I stood there, behind the white linen curtain, seeing everything from afar. The taste of dignity, when so calm, when it returns, is strange at first, almost bitter. But then, we get used to it. And he realizes that standing up, even after so much bowing, is a victory that no one can take away from us. I'll tell you what, the most memorable moment has not yet been this, but it was here that something inside them began to crumble. Because when those who have always lowered their heads decide to stand up, the world of those who have always been in charge begins to tremble. Tiffany shouted, "Wow!" Threatened to call the management, said she wouldn't accept this nonsense. Jasmine stood her ground. Why? It was not justified. He did not offer pampering, and at that moment, the tables turned for good. They returned to the room, still trying to understand what was happening. I knew it. Calm. And I also knew that this was just the beginning, because that very day, a battery notification on the door and the reading of that envelope, it would change everything. Have you ever wondered what might be written inside? Then hold my hand, because the thinnest part of the blade is yet to come. Tiffany walked through the lobby in the same heels as always, head held high, cell phone in hand, as if the world was still spinning around her. But that day, the eyes around her no longer followed her in the same way. The waiter who always pulled the chair for her at breakfast passed right by. The maid who used to smile yellow looked away. The security guard at the entrance, who had previously greeted her with an automatic good morning, now just nodded. Considered Sam. And yet, with a certain embarrassment. And that's when she started to feel it. It was not a reaction. It was an absence. The absence of flattery. The absence of privilege. And, above all, the absence of respect, which only remains where there is truth. She pretended not to notice, but I saw it from the balcony. I saw the way she straightened her hair as if that was going to regain control. How he walked to the reception once again, this time not to scream, but to try to smile and start a conversation. Yasmin, with all the education in the world, answered only what was necessary. No excesses, without too much attention. Tiffany smiled yellow, and he left, with my ego scratched, still trying to understand what was happening. At lunch, she ordered her favorite dish and was told it was not available today. Brandon, already restless, muttered, there's something wrong. It's just a coincidence, she countered. Her eyes narrowed. Interesting. But the security she carried as a shield had already begun to crack. No, there are moments in life that we don't forget. A smell, a look, a silence that says it all. I, for one, will never forget the sound of her leap echoing in the empty hallway, and the way no one else hurried their pace to please her, because in that sound, knew as your eyes you so trashbe. I heard the beginning of the end of a cycle. It's amazing how some memories become invisible tattoos on our skin, right? Tell me here in the comments, what memory was marked in you like that too? A moment when the world turned, even if quietly. Right, I've felt this, or I've been through something like this. If you want to share it with me, Brandon, for his part, began to notice. His eyes wandered the halls with less confidence. He fumbled when trying to use the private sauna and was told that access was now restricted. He tried to order a special drink at the bar and heard a sorry. Today, we are not offering this service. They were not punishments. They were just limits. And how difficult it is for those who have never had it to accept that they exist. And in the midst of this emptiness that settled around them, something began to change inside him as well. I saw it, because a mother feels. He looked for me with his eyes, even if he pretended he didn't. He wanted to understand where I was, maybe even why I had disappeared. But also, deep down, I think I was already beginning to fear the reason. And then came the notification. A hotel employee knocked on the door of the suite with a manila envelope. Signature, please. Tiffany took it. Suspicious. He read the first line and turned pale. Brandon approached. The paper trembled in her hands, and the question he asked echoed down the hall. What is this? But the answer, I knew this would come later, because in that envelope was the first warning that their comfort had a deadline. And the truth, I wouldn't wait any longer. Do you want to know what was written there? So, stay, because the next chapter, it is the one that no one can tear. Warning town. Brandon went down to the meeting with an air of disdain, as if he was already bored with yet another administrative problem caused by his missing mother-in-law. I thought I would receive some formal apology, perhaps a discount for the failures in service. He walked into the executive room with his blazer open and his cell phone in his hand, not realizing that as he crossed that door, the world he knew was about to fall apart. The room was cold, silent, soberly decorated. The kind of place where truths don't scream, They're just laid on the table. On the other side, a man in a dark suit, gray tie, long, and sharp eyes stood up to greet him. Mr. Brandon Carter, listened him. What is an intro to God? I'm Kyle. Thank you for coming. Brandon nodded. No. Trying to appear in control. What's the problem? Anyway, the lawyer sat down, opened a leather briefcase, and slid a thick dossier across the table. This is the costs accrued during your family's stay at Coastal Paradise. Brandon laughed humorlessly. My mother always paid for these trips. That must be some mistake. Not anymore. One action on, sit you tired. The lawyer's voice was clear. How? Without hesitation. By direction of the owner. My direction of the owner. All amounts related to the reservation in the name of Brandon Carter, including daily rates, spa services, special food, simul downtown, executive transportation, consumption at the bar, I ask you, children's toys and laundry are being charged directly to the person responsible for the accommodation. Brandon frowned. Sorry, but no worry. Who authorized this? The lawyer crossed his fingers on the table. And Mrs. Ethel M. Carter. Now, how did Nastasi illegal calm? I was Brandon laughed, almost relieved. My mother? My mother. But me. She doesn't rule here anymore. She retired years ago. Not exactly. The lawyer held up a sheet. Here is the updated minutes of the property. Well, Mrs. Wykerner, Ethel M. There must be Carter continues as the founder and sole majority shareholder of the Carter Hospitality Group. No strategic or administrative decision can be made without your knowledge, including the permanence of guests in presidential suites. Brandon was silent. His jaw dropped, even though he tried to disguise it with a rigid posture. But she's just the heart of it all. No hurt sin there up to down. Mr. Noun. Carter. That's when he felt his legs weaken for the first time. The image of the elderly mother, quiet, with his sweet look and simple clothes, fell apart. In front of him, another woman appeared, one he never wanted to see, the woman who built all that sustained the luxury, the comfort, the facade of the perfect family. And that, Liu, in silence, decided it was time to turn off the tap. The lawyer continued, all amounts must be paid by the end of the stay. Otherwise, legal action will be taken as per the contract signed at check-in. But we never sign these things. Tiffany signs. She will also be notified. Brandon tried to get up, but sat down again. There was no strength in the body, only the weight of the truth. I imagined the scene as I looked out over Biscayne Bay from above, with a cup of tea in my hand and the sun gilding the room. I imagined his silence when he discovered that he never knew who I really was. I imagined the pride I had swallowed for years, and that now, finally, came back as justice. And you know what? I didn't feel sorry. I felt peace. Because there is a time in life when we need to let the truth do what love can no longer teach. But she was still missing Tiffany. And when the notification reached her hands, ah, my dear, then, yes, the game would turn around. One, at least Sidio. Want to find out what she did when she received the envelope? So don't let go of my hand now, because the next chapter, it's hers, and it will hurt. The notification arrived in Tiffany's hands in the late afternoon, when she returned from massage at the spa, with that air of someone who believes that the world is an extension of her will. She opened the envelope still, with her freshly done nails shining under the sun at the reception. He read the first line, and the blush of his cheeks turned to ice. For the last second, Vilsa. What was seen on her face was no longer arrogance. It was fear. Fear of what he never imagined himself facing. The consequence, her credit card, the black one, which she swayed like a scepter, was now tied to the full charge for her stay. She didn't understand, or pretended not to understand. He walked up to Jasmine with short, aggressive steps, slammed his hand on the counter, the old hand on the down, and began to speak loudly. This is a mistake. I've been a guest for years. How? You know who I am. Who authorized this? Who? And Arzozia. I'm not him too. And duty. Yasmin maintained her posture. How? He looked her in the eye firmly and replied, as if offering a truth and not an attack. It was the owner. Mom. Tiffany came closer, pointed her finger in her face. And who do you think you are to treat me like that? I want to talk to the real person in charge. Now, other guests stopped by. A gentleman, wearing a Maine cap and linen shirt, took his cell phone out of his pocket and started recording. A couple with children quietly walked away, but Tiffany saw nothing. She was blinded by rage. I demand the name of the person who sent this. I demand to know who you think can humiliate me inside this hotel. And it was then that Jasmine, with the calm of someone who already knew that moment would come, spun the computer screen, pointed with her finger, and said, "The founder of the group is staying on the 15th floor. You know it well. It's your mother-in-law, Marcel, Nachanti, Ethel M. Carter." The silence was immediate. Tiffany's eyes widened. His mouth opened, but nothing came out. The noise of the lobby seemed to have been swallowed up by that instant. Brandon, who was coming from the elevator, stopped me, and for the first time, it seemed smaller than the reflection itself. The recording, I got to on 1, 2, 1, 3, let's see what Todd, of course, went on. It went viral that same day in a private group of VIP guests. Mother-in-law humiliated? I don't think so, said one of the comments. Elegance is serving the dish cold with white gloves, wrote another. I read them all, not with pleasure, but with relief, because I wasn't the one who screamed. That was life. And when life answers for us, there is no one who disputes it. But what did Brandon do after that? No one expected that. Only Yarnand. Do you think he sided with me? or hers. Wait and see, my tenant, because blood weighs, but the ego weighs more. Man, I can't tell. The breeze from Biscayne Bay tapped gently on my face, and the sound of the waves mingled with the comfortable silence of my penthouse. I chose that late afternoon time on purpose. The copper-colored sky, the sun streaming down the glass windows, and the silence. Ah, silence before the inevitable. I was sitting at the table, with a pot of hot tea in front of me, and two envelopes ready, one with lead weight, the other with the farewell cut. Jasmine had warned me. They asked to see her. Not. I just said, say, I'll be waiting. When the door opened, there was no announcement, no formality. Ah, just two bodies entering as if stepping on sacred ground. Tiffany was a step behind, her shoulders tense, her face still trying to maintain a controlled expression. Brandon looked smaller. Now as if he had lost a battle. He didn't even know he was fighting. I didn't get up. I pointed to the two chairs in front of me. Sit down. Lie fired. My voice came out clear, quiet, but with the weight of decades of silence swallowed. Tiffany tried to smile. A pathetic attempt to soften the inevitable. Brandon muttered a mom. Nanin. But I raised my hand. Ma, say what you came to say. Ma. Then, hell, I want silence. He tried. It was all a misunderstanding. I didn't know, she added, teary-eyed but without a real tear. And if we had known, we would have treated it differently. That's when I took a deep breath and calmly pushed the two envelopes onto the table. Here it is, the termination of all financial support. And here, the full charge for the stay. Made it on your card. No discounts, no favors, as it should be. You can't do that. Tiffany stood up, her mask breaking. Your family. I went. I got up then, for the first time since the beginning of that trip. No courtship takes a nice so wild. I stood before them. I went when I washed clothes at dawn to pay for your husband's uniform. When I sold the car to him to finish college. When I bought your house and put it in his name. I went when I put food on the plate that you didn't even know where it came from. But today I am just the founder of the place you believed you could step on, and am doing exactly what you'd expect of someone who runs an empire. Cutting waste. Brandon lowered his eyes. Tiffany trembled. But I didn't expect regret. I didn't even need it anymore. There are things that we live and keep, but maybe by telling, we help another heart to breathe. Like this video and subscribe. And let's make this story reach those who need to hear that there is still time to get up, even after so much silence. You are no longer my dependence. Not emotionally, and now, please, not even financially. But I and the boys. Brandon tried one last appeal. They are welcome. They always will be. But you. I turned my back. You can go. They stood there for a moment, me paralyzed. Then they left, without looking back, and I I finally sat down again, not tired, but free. But little did they know that there was still one more act in that story, and it was public. Want to know what I prepared for dinner that night? Stay with me, because no one forgets a table where the truth is served. I woke up early that day, sooner than he needed to. But the heart, he has his own clock when he senses the end of a cycle. The sky was still opening up in pale hues over the bay, and I was already sitting on the balcony of the suite, my cup of tea in hand and my gaze fixed on the entrance to the resort. I knew they would leave that morning. Jasmine had warned me. Mrs. No. Tiffany has requested to check out for 8 a.m. Nay. I just nodded. Myself. I didn't ask for details. I didn't ask if they left anything behind. Some absences are lighter, anyway. No notes. No explanations. Around 7. No deseo. Around. About you. No 7:45 a.m. I saw the porter bringing the bags, the same ones that Tiffany made a point of showing off with designer labels. Now they were piled up, worn out, with loose wheels, and no importance. Brandon left first, pulling the handle of one of the large suitcases. I had my head down, my shoulders heavy, and for the first time, without the cell phone in hand, Tiffany came behind. Makeup now, dressed in white, exaggerated sunglasses, hard steps, as if the ground were the enemy. Oh, he tried to maintain his posture, as if posing could cancel out what he had lost, but it was visible on why. There was no more brilliance. When they reached the main door, something curious happened. The valet, Noel, who had previously hurried to see her, did not move. The receptionist, who used to call her by name, just said, "Good riddance." No title, no. No tone, no tone. Just a formality. Tiffany waited for someone to open the car door. No one went. She had to pull the doorknob herself. I saw her hand tremble. Zero. Brandon hesitated before entering. He looked once at the building, as if expecting to see someone waving from a window. Oh, no. But I didn't get up. I remained seated, whole, in silence. It's funny. For years, I thought that revenge needed a loud voice, a slammed door, a screaming tear. But there, at that moment, I learned that there is a type of justice that lives in silence, a silence that does not humiliate, but teaches. It does not punish, but it shows, and that sometimes it is the only way to be heard. Han Wunschtan. There's a phrase that never left my head after that moment. When we stop asking for love, dignity goes back to living inside us. And if you've come this far, listening to me, maybe you've also experienced something like this. That's why I tell you, stay with me, because the end of this story, now, I am to not to assist, wash. He still has one last lesson, and perhaps it is the most beautiful of all. Have you ever thought about what happens when we finally choose freedom? Because that's what comes now, and you'll see the days that came after were, curiously, the lightest I have experienced in a long time. Not because everything had been magically resolved, but because, for the first time, I no longer carried the weight of begging for what should already be rightfully mine. Respect. With Brandon and Tiffany out of the hotel, the atmosphere breathed differently. It was as if the building itself let go of its shoulders. The hallways were quieter, but not cold. The lobby seemed larger, and the employees, the employees looked me in the eye with something that went beyond education. It was recognition. I started to visit the service areas as I used to, when I still wore a white uniform and tied my hair with a scarf. And I entered the laundry, greeted each of the boys and girls who took care of what almost no one sees. One of the girls, seeing me, while Modernter Alban covered her mouth with her hand and said quietly, Lulu. I knew it. I gave her a hug. Long. Because sometimes a hug is all someone needs to remember that they are part of something bigger. At the end of that same day, I summoned Jasmine and asked for the names of the employees who had been on duty that week. I had individual bonuses prepared, not out of loyalty. How? I told her, honest, but out of dignity, because those who choose silence out of respect deserve to be seen. And then, came what surprised me the most. The boys, my grandchildren, without their parents around, they looked different, lighter, as if they had come out of a glass dome. On the second day, they asked me to walk with them on the beach. We sat on the sand, made castles, wet our feet. At night, I took them to the terrace. I pointed to the stars. I talked about my childhood in Savannah, the first kiss I had at a church dance, the fright I got when I found out I was pregnant with Brandon. I showed them a box with old photos. Grandfather, Henry, all handsome in the Navy uniform. The first photo of the Hotel Tallahassee, when it was still just an inn with 12 rooms. One of them took me by the hand and said, Grandma, did you own all this? I looked at her fondly and replied, Dimna, I still am. And the most beautiful thing was that she was not scared. He just smiled, and as if to say, now I understand. But the most touching came one night, while I was putting them to sleep. The youngest, with his eyes almost closed, asked me, Grandma, you did tell Huxley. Are you going to disappear? Like Dad didn't even say. That crossed me. I sat on the edge of the bed and said, with all the sweetness I could, am not one to disappear. Am one to stay where they respect me. And I kissed his forehead. No, I didn't have to explain what had happened. I didn't have to tell about the screams, nor show the papers. What I did or didn't do was already there, in the new space that opened up between us, because true authority, it doesn't scream, and those who have history, don't need to prove it. You just need to live. And in that silence in which everything settles down, I felt that something would still come on the out, because people like Tiffany don't accept easy defeat. And Brandon, well, Brandon was still my son. And a mother, even if injured, knows when the storm comes. But what did he do next? No one expected it. Me neither. Are you ready for it? Because what's next changes everything. Returning home was like breathing after a long time underwater. My little corner in Fort Lauderdale has never felt so cozy, so mine. It was late afternoon when I sat on the porch with my cup of chamomile tea, as I always did. The sky was already beginning to brown, and the sound of the sea in the background reminded me that, despite everything, life went on at its calm and unwavering pace. I looked at the horizon, and there, among the colors of the sunset, I felt a peace that I hadn't felt in a long time. It wasn't that forced peace of those who swallow everything so as not to bother. It was another. It was the one that comes when we look in the mirror and, finally, recognize ourselves. I stood there thinking about everything I had been through, in the girl I was, so young, lost in a world of responsibilities that I didn't choose, in the love I built with Henry, short, manzershaw, wistawa, but whole, apt, on the days when he slept on the floor of his room while Brandon had the only bed in the house. I remembered the times I didn't eat properly so he wouldn't miss school, the lies I told him about not being hungry, just so I wouldn't scare him. And I found myself thinking, did I make a mistake by never telling who I really was? By hiding from him every victory, every sacrifice, as if my strength had to be invisible for him to shine? Could it be that, by sparing him the truth, I transformed him into the very man who now denied me the least respect? But soon after, the thought quieted down, because, deep down, I know I don't I don't regret it. I did what I thought was right. I chose to love with strength, with renunciation, with tenderness, to love even when he had already stopped looking at me as a son, and love enough when it is true. It is not a mistake, even if it hurts. But loving is also not letting yourself be erased. And that was what this trip taught me the most. That we can continue to love, but with an upright spine. That we can continue to take care of ourselves, without accepting to be treated as anything. Now, I allow myself this pause, that breathing, not to run away, but to live, to live without expecting a return, without expecting applause, because I finally understood that the most beautiful recognition is the one that comes from within. And the silence that accompanied me for so many years, today no longer hurts me. Today he protects me. Funny how everything changes. I, who for so long kept silent for fear of looking ungrateful, now I keep silent by choice, for elegance, by force. And in this choice, I found myself again. But before I could finish my tea, the intercom rang. It's the gatehouse. An envelope had been left for me. No sender. And when you open it, there it was. His handwriting. From my son. A short ticket a request, one question, and an address. Is there still something to be said between the two of us? Could it be that, after all, did he learn to see me? Do you think I should go? Because what happened in that last meeting, I never told anyone. No, it's okay. I talks. But today, no, no consist. I'm going to tell you. I went, ah, I grabbed my light blue coat, the same one I wore to Brandon's christening, and went, well, Mr. You want to see. The address he wrote on the note was a simple cafe, one of those with tables on the sidewalk and the smell of fresh bread coming out of the door. He was already there, sitting, shitting, looking at the clock, nervous as a boy. When he saw me, he stood up. But I didn't speed up the pace. I went in my time. I sat down slowly. And before he said anything, I smiled. Nero Sauka. Not that smile that hides. Clean smile. No. He tried to speak, but got tangled. He said he didn't know, that he felt ashamed, that he had let things get out of hand. I heard everything, with the same silence that I have heard for years. And when he finished, I took a deep breath and said, I didn't come to punish you. I came to allow myself. He cried. And for the first time in a long time, I saw my son, the boy who shared dinner with me, the one who wrote letters saying that I was his heroine. Tiffany didn't come, and I didn't ask, because sometimes absence is also an answer. Today, I am at peace. I continue to drink my tea on the balcony, listening to the sea. Oh, Brandon sends flowers on my birthday and, every once in a while, a letter. We are still far from recovering what was lost, but now there is respect, and that, for me, no, is enough. The grandchildren call me. No, they want to know more stories about Grandpa Henry, and the other day, one of them called me my powerful grandmother. Oh, I smiled inside, because life has taught me that true victory is not to shout victory. It is to live in peace after war. I was a cleaner. In Bashi, Mr. Whitehurst, I was a cleaner. Yes, but I was also the architect of my own story. I fell. I got dirty. I was left aside. But each of these wounds became a step. And today, I climbed them all. Nes, Federkaupter, und Achiso, was die. If there's one thing I've learned and want to leave here, it's this. No one needs to know about its value for it to exist. No one needs to acknowledge their struggle for it to have been worth it. We don't fight to be seen. We fight to stay on our feet. And when we do it with dignity, justice comes, even if it takes time. Time is the only judge who doesn't need to be paid to see the truth. So, if you are on the other side, experiencing some hidden pain, I tell you, hold on tight. Whoever plants with love, one day reaps with honor. Believe me. Thank you for listening to me so far. Really. I'm not kind of sit from that down. I'm talking a lot. And you waiting here. Opening this part of my story was like reliving everything. but it was also like liberating. And if this touched you in any way, does it leave me a hug in the form of a like? It warms my heart and helps this little corner to grow. And if you want to come back for another coffee with me, subscribe here to the channel. One by a doctor the channel. This space is ours. Right here in the comments of which city you are listening to me. I love to imagine where this story is going. What color the sky has there. The near and soon. What smell your memory has. And it activates the bell. Okay. That way you don't lose when the coffee is brewed again. Don't go away yet. Listen to the next true story that will appear on the screen. Always remember, each wrinkle tells a story, and each story carries a strength. Watch the next video here on the channel with another incredible story.